Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Guillermo, for organizing this very interesting event. And I'm very glad to also represent the UNCCD and give my overview and contribute on behalf of the UNCCD. I'm going to say something about the UNCCD Drought Initiative and beyond. Before I do that, I just want, this was not maybe in my slides yesterday, I just want to first introduce the UNCCD. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is one of the 3 Rio Conventions that was born on 17 June 1994. It entered into force in 1996. And we are a convention with the objective to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought at all levels with partnership with many organizations. Membership, we're about 196 country parties, plus the European Union, which is 197th party. So 196 countries all over the world are members and signatories of this convention, plus the European Union. The UNCCD has a strategic objective that was launched in 2018. There are a number of them that relate to ecosystems, desertification, land degradation, sustainable land management, and land degradation neutrality, to improve the living conditions of affected populations, and also a strategic objective on drought. As you can see, it's strategic objective 3 aims to mitigate, adapt to, and manage effects of drought in order to enhance resilience of vulnerable populations and ecosystems. And the 4th one is on environmental benefits, and the last one is on additional financial and non-financial resources to support implementation of the convention. Out of these 5 strategic objectives, the drought objective is a new one that was strengthened, that was also adopted by parties all over the world, including countries in the region of CISA. So they adopted this. We need to do more on drought. I think it has been said several times, but I just want to highlight the focus of UNCCD as far as drought is concerned. As you could see, the global map of the drought episode, you can see, for example, drought hazard in Australia. In the US is dark red, which means that it's a lot of drought. The intensity of drought is very high. But when it comes to the risk, which has components of vulnerability and exposure, you see it in a dark blue. Why? Because the vulnerability to drought is low. So we are aiming for a global map which is blue in terms of the drought risk. And we are not talking about maybe reducing the drought episode as such, which is the drought hazard, but minimizing the risk, and we can come up with a lower risk for drought. This is, at least as far as the UNCCD is concerned, to make sure that countries are less affected by drought. I just want to first go through some of the key activities that we have done at COP14 in September 2019 in India. We had a drought preparedness day, the whole day at the Conference of Parties in India, committed only for drought preparedness. And we had FAO, World Meteorological Organization, and Global Water Partnership together with UNCCD, who promoted this day. And we had launched a number of publications like the Drought Resilience Adaptation Management Policy Framework Technical Guideline, which is basically adapting the 3 key pillars that Robert Stefanski and Dan yesterday also presented. But also we try to align it with the Sendai disaster risk framework reduction on the 6 areas. So we try to make sure that it is aligned into that. And we also launched another vulnerability assessment and policy recommendations publication. This is on Pillar 2. That was launched at COP. This was also done by WMO, World Bank, and Global Water Partnership on the benefits of action versus the cost of inaction. These are all available on our website. And then the white paper that was produced by Antonio Morales, who is also with us today, on approach to drought preparedness. Where are we now and where do we go from here? So there are a number of activities in terms of the proactive management approach that we are trying to promote with a number of organizations. So repetition is learning, and I would like to highlight that the UNCCD's approach is not different from the other organizations. We are also adapting this 3 key pillars approach. On the first one, I think it has already been said on drought monitoring and early warning systems. And the second one is on drought risk and vulnerability assessment. As I said, we are talking about minimizing the risk, because hazard is an exogenous factor. Drought is going to increase in terms of severity, in terms of the spatial extent and duration, but we can reduce the exposure, the amount of population, livelihoods, assets that are exposed to drought. We can also reduce the vulnerability, which means the sensitivity to droughts and the coping capacity to drought. And we also believe, like all the other sectors, that drought sector risk is sector specific. So we need to really do it sector by sector. And the other one is to implement measures to limit impacts of drought. The same thing, I think it has been said and it has been explained very well by my colleagues. So I'm not going to go through what these three key pillars are all about. But I just want to highlight that the drought cycle management, going from reactive to proactive drought management, making sure that we work on drought in non-drought times. This is the business as usual approach, is to minimize drought risks or trying to respond to drought. But as you could see, in non-drought period, trying to make sure that all these three key activities are implemented. So just having this introduction, I wanted to highlight the UNCCD Drought Initiative has three key pillars. We just launched it in September 2017. We had a conference of parties in China with the aim to first support countries to implement and develop national drought plans, to also facilitate regional efforts to reduce vulnerability and risk, and also to produce and develop a toolbox to boost the resilience of people and ecosystems to drought. This is the UNCCD-led drought toolbox. This is a website. As you could see, we have built this toolbox based on the three key pillars. It's a UNCCD-led, but it's not a UNCCD drought toolbox. It has a lot of organizations, FAO, Global Water Partnership, European Commission, National Drought Mitigation Center, University of Nebraska, UNEP, and also WMO. All these 6 partners equally participated and make it visible and applicable. So if you click on this, it's available on our website. You will be able to see a lot of tools, case-specific, context-specific solutions for minimizing drought risks on these 3 key pillars. I'm not going to also go through the details of these UNCCD-led drought logs. The other dimension of the drought initiative is the national drought plans. 73 countries are participating. More than 50 of them have already completed their national drought plans. The usual mistake when you approach a country, if they ask them for a national drought plan, yes, we have, but what they had is how to respond to drought. And it's basically also a sector under one ministry, it's not visible. So what we did, or at least the added value of the UNCCD approach, is we wanted to make sure that there is a high level government commitment, visibility of this national drought plan. Head of state or the prime minister signs up with the UNCCD that they want to be involved in this initiative. And as you could see, more than 50% of these countries are from Africa, but we have also countries from LAC, Latin America and the Caribbean, and I'm sure some of them are also CISA countries, I hope. But at least 15 countries from the Latin America and the Caribbean countries are involved. And all the national drought plans which have been validated are also on our website at the UNCCD website. So we wanted to make sure that countries learn from each other. Those who are not part of this initiative could already see what is done in the neighboring country and how they have developed their national drought plans. So these are also based on these 3 key pillars and the 8 to 10 step process that is developed by Donald Wilhite, and it's very, very consistent among countries. So what lessons have we learned so far? Because it has been already more than 3 years since this launch of the drought initiative. Again, lack of intersectoral coordination is a big problem. The thing is, they say it themselves also in their national drought plans. What are your biggest challenges? We still are not coordinated enough. So at least they have already explicitly said it at a country level. And in many cases, a national drought plan is owned by one sector or maybe a ministry in a country, which cannot enforce action to other line ministries. So in this UNCCD drought initiative, what we did was we make sure that this is under the high level authority of the government, whether it's a prime minister or head of state. The other thing is existing perspective still focusing on existing crisis and reactive approach. There is insufficient data when it comes to, especially on monitoring and early warning systems. They don't have enough rain gauge stations or to make sure that the soil moisture, land cover, and a few other indicators to even develop an early warning system. Inadequate understanding of the cost of inaction, lack of proper communication of drought early warning systems. At the federal level, at the high level government level, they have good early warning systems that functions. Sometimes they know it 6 months before or 1 year before drought strikes, but at in the beneficiary user, at the local level, it's not yet communicated well. So in order to instigate action, you need to also trickle it down to the local level. Emphasis on improving water supply through rainwater harvesting is still the focus for how to manage water scarcity, how to manage drought. That's exactly what they are doing so far, constructing dams, but not going the way of how to manage drought. Still, mainstreaming gender in the national drought plans is also an ongoing process. It's still a weak aspect of the national drought plans that we have seen. And so we need to leverage drought as a connector among sectors, and we need to also harness the benefits of modern technology. It's also been explicitly said in their national drought plans, like artificial intelligence, mobile, remote sensing, and others. So now I just come to the second part of my presentation. It will be very quick. At the COP14 in India, we had a very heated debate on drought. Countries were not able to reach into an agreement very easily. And this was one of the last topics to be agreed upon towards the end of the 2 weeks conference of parties. And it was covered by Nature as a publication, African nations push to be able to improve drought research. In drought research, they call it. At the end of the day, countries agreed to establish an intergovernmental working group on drought. This intergovernmental working group is working first on what exists, what are countries doing in terms of minimizing the impacts of drought, what kind of drought policies exist, what are the best case scenarios, stories. So what is the existing policy implementation and national coordination framework? So the first task of the intergovernmental working group, which is composed of about 30 people, 15 are experts on drought from all over the world, merit-based selected, and 15 are regional representatives, 3 representatives per region. And they are also supposed to consider options for appropriate policy advocacy and implementation measures at all levels in order to reduce drought under UNCCD. And they are doing this in the context of a wider holistic and integrated approach. So the work is ongoing. They have produced the interim report. It's already done in terms of publication. It will be published probably the next few weeks. It's just going through the process of endorsement. So it will be available in 6 UN languages. That's all what I wanted to say about this. And it is important also for CISA countries to make sure that their country or region-specific considerations are also taken into account. So when we have it published, you can always reach me and talk to me about it if you have any context specific. So this IWG is again working on these 3 key pillars, but they have 4 task groups. One task group is working on policy and governance issues. The other one is how can we motivate resources? How can we do some kind of private investment? How can we ensure harness financing on drought risk management? The other one is working on vulnerability and assessment. And another task group is working on monitoring and early warning systems. And they will coordinate and synthesize across groups to come up with a recommendation for COP15 that will happen in end of the next year. So we are expecting some kind of a big game changer COP decision coming up for drought. So at policy level, they are discussing about how can we heighten commitment at global level. What can we do at global level in order to address droughts? Because so far, drought emergency is left up to the country to declare drought emergency and seek for international community to react to support. But then we need some kind of commitment to prepare for drought. How can we strengthen collaborative centers? How can we develop networks and capacities? And they are even thinking about establishing a global network specific to integrated drought management. For the resources, they are also discussing about economic stimulus. How can we de-risk? Because investing on drought preparedness is still risky. How can we de-risk? How can we think of insurance, banks, and private financing, better financing mechanisms, including drought funds, maybe drought trust fund, public-private partnership, and business case models for for drought risk management, and some kind of catalytic role for public financing and funding mechanisms. For vulnerabilities, they are still looking on the need to support the mapping of drought impacts, because in many countries, you don't see the full drought risk profiling of a country before drought strikes. So they don't know where to act and how when drought strikes. So we need to support countries also on additional focused consideration of how to assess drought vulnerability. On the monitoring group, we are looking into how to boost the global systems for monitoring the systemic effects of land and ecosystem management. They are also looking into how to invest not only on the technical capacity of drought early warning and monitoring systems, but the infrastructure, the governance aspects of it, and stakeholder engagement and communication process. So there is quite good and rich discussion going on that there is a lot of high expectation from countries out of this IWG, and I'm pleased to also inform you that at least 2 or 3 of these IWG members are with us in this call, Robert Stefanski, Mark Svobeda, and Roger Pulbarty. So this is a website of what we have so far on the Intergovernmental Working Group, and I will be happy to share to Guillermo and maybe through Guillermo to all of you who are participants of this on the first outcomes of the Intergovernmental Working Group. But for now, at least you can see the preliminary outcomes on this website. I think that's basically it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to receive any other questions that you may have.
Thank you, Daniel. It is us who should thank you for your nice presentation. Let me transmit a couple of questions or comments that came in during the talk. First, Jose Marengo requests clarification that Brazil indeed is not listed among the Latin American Caribbean countries that applied to be part of the UNCCD drought initiative. Is that so? I don't know if you have any comments, Daniel.
Yes, we made a call for requests, and Brazil did not apply. So it was just based on the call that we have announced it, and any country that wants to participate. So Brazil apparently did not apply to be part of this drought initiative. Not all countries have applied, and there was nothing we can do to bring Brazil on board.
Thank you. One issue that apparently seems to be coming up repeatedly is specific help or guidance on how to proceed. Sofia Endara is asking, what do you think might be more appropriate to begin with a risk management plan? A multi-sectoral approach, or start one sector at a time, for example, with agriculture?
In my view, there are a lot of experts here who could also probably support this. But to me, what is really missing is drought is always in one sector. And I keep always saying that drought is not a sector, it's a connector. So we need to make sure that drought is integrated into, I think there was a very interesting presentation by Roger Pulbarty on how the drought is being handled, for example, at the US presidential memorandum starting from 2016. And every sector is part of this drought plan. Because when drought strikes, it affects every segment of the economy, every sector. So we cannot just start with one national drought plan for one sector, or of course, the vulnerability is sector specific, but the national drought plan should definitely make sure that there is a national stakeholder dialogue, and everybody should be part of this plan, and it should be as comprehensive as possible to the extent possible that the plan is inclusive for every segment of the economy.
Thanks, Daniel. Let me merge together questions and comments from both Leandro Diaz and from Ana Paula Cunha from Brazil. And since basically you said learning is repeating or repeating is learning, the topic of governance or coordination seems to be very present. And Ana Paula mentions examples of duplications of functions, overlap of functions, etc. Any comments from you, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to drought, I think the governance issue or the coordination issue is very important, because when drought strikes, as I said, it affects every segment of the economy. And when you go to a country, they just try to handle, they try to look into data from their perspectives, which is So there should be some kind of a coordinated approach, even to make sure that there is some synergies to prepare for drought. We have seen it, for example, in the specific case of Ethiopia, where the meteorology does not communicate with agriculture. They have their own data, they have their own monitoring system, or if drought is striking or not, but they are not well coordinated. So that aspect is still not there. So there should be some kind of synergy that will also definitely reduce the duplication of efforts. Also, this is also true not only within sectors in a country, but also among agencies. That's why we are trying to come together, work together. When we speak about drought preparedness, we are not speaking about 5 pillars or 6 pillars. We are talking about the 3 pillars. Everybody is saying it. And that's why I was saying repetition is learning, because when we are consistent, and people are just getting it now, I think, because we were consistent for a long period of time, many of us coming together. So we need to be consistent in our communicating also to the countries. And I think that really has made a big difference since 2013. All of us who are part of this call were saying it the same way. These are the 3 key pillars, the steps to work on drought preparedness. Who should be involved? Everybody should be involved. It's everybody's business. We need to work on drought in non-drought times. It's not the problem of only one sector, because when there is drought, then the country declares emergency, not the agriculture ministry. It's not the tourism ministry, but they are affected all. So it should be the business of everyone also when before drought strikes. That's how we have been doing it. And again, I say it's repetition is still learning, and we are almost there to make sure that we are impacting everyone in terms of communication.
Thank you, Daniel, and please keep repeating it. Maybe we'll learn some of these messages.